This meeting of the Maargate Planning Board is called to order. Please stand for the flag salute.
Attention, salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Roll call, please.
Tom Collins. Clem Wozleski.
Here.
Rich Patterson.
Here.
Mike Cristaldi.
Here.
Jim Galantino. Margaret Gubernalti. Craig Palmisano. Remy Pelosi. Joe DiGirolamo. Ron Gruppo. Mike Richmond. Stephen Giuseppe.
This meeting is being held in accordance with due public notice thereof and pursuant to the New Jersey State Sunshine Law. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the press, and a copy of same has been posted in the bulletin board in the municipal building. All applicants are hereby advised that should you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form which informs you regarding the timing of receiving building permits and mercantile licenses. At the end of your case tonight, please see the board administrator to sign the 2 information sheets. I'd like to hear a motion for the approval of the minutes from the meeting of August 29th, 2019.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. I'd like to hear a motion for the approval of decisions and resolutions number 27, 2019, Scott Paymer, number 28, 2019, Dennis and Kimberly Forte, number 29, 2019, Andrew Perry, and number 30, 2019, Ronald and Debbie Miller.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Motion passes. First case is Samara T.V. Dicker, 408 North Exeter Avenue, Block 607.02, Lot 33.05, in the S40 District, to grant C variance relief for a fence less than 5 feet from the front property line, face of garage further than 26 feet from property line, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. McLaurin, will you be sworn in, please?
And Mike Richmond recused himself. He's on the 200-foot list.
Mike Richmond recused himself.
Mr. McLaurin, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Chairman, Board members. My report is originally dated August 28th, 2019, revised September 23rd. In the case of Samara Traki Vidal Dicker at 408 North Exeter Avenue, Block 607.02, Lot 33.05, which is in the S40 zone. For C variances, planning and zoning report. This is both a hardship variance and a substantial benefit variance. Background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Maargate in order to construct an in-ground swimming pool, detached garage, and a fence, which is required for the swimming pool within the S40 zoning district. The lot was once 2 lots and has been consolidated to create 1 oversized lot. Had the lots not been consolidated, a use variance would have been required for both the pool and the detached garage, which is why they consolidated. Page 2 of the report is the zoning schedule for the S40 zone. As you can see, highlighted in yellow are the variances required. There are 4 variances being requested. The first one is setback to face of detached garage, whereas the maximum distance from the rear lot line to the face of the detached garage is supposed to be 26 feet and 29 feet is proposed. Detached garage is not permitted with garage below the building. Again, the setback for the detached garage to the face, that is a hardship variance because the rear lot line is actually in Minnie Creek, so they cannot put the garage in Minnie Creek. Detached garage is not permitted with garage below the building, whereas parking is provided below the building, it's existing, and a detached garage is being proposed requiring a variance. Again, the original intent of that ordinance was for new construction, but we should look at that in this case too. Item number 3 is fence location. Whereas fences are not permitted with any front yard, and one fence is existing within the front yard setback at 12.2 feet, and one is proposed to encroach further into the setback at 5 feet, thereby requiring a variance. Again, the sections in the ordinance are cited in the variances. Last one is the driveway curb total width, whereas 20 total feet of curb cut is permitted. 22 feet exists and 32 feet is proposed. Again, this used to be 2 lots, is now 1. They would be permitted to have 40 feet, and they're asking for 32 feet for the 1. A waiver requested, they should probably request a checklist for submission. My comments are as follows, and they do reflect the variances. The required maximum distance from the rear property line to the face of any detached garage is not permitted to be more than 26 feet. Due to the size and shape of the property and the location of the mean high water line, the garage had to be moved forward and cannot physically meet the 26-foot setback. Again, this is a hardship variance. My comments continue for item 2, 3, and 4. For these variances, both the C1 and C2 criteria need to be satisfied in this application. Again, my recommendations are as shown on page 4 and 5. They are reducing some of the concrete on the south side of the building to reduce and maintain the required landscape coverage, so that they are not seeking a landscape coverage or impervious coverage variance. They have received a CAFR permit to permit everything that's shown on these plans. And at this time, I will conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Chris Balinson. I represent Daniel and Samara Dicker with respect to their application this evening to the planning board. If I speak, I've had a cold for about a week. If I speak muffled or too low, just tell me, because my ears are clogged. Our property's at 408 North Exeter Avenue. It's at the top of Exeter Avenue once you get in there. Block 607.02, lot 33.05. Previously 2 building lots. Their house is to the left and the empty lot is to the right. It's in the S40 zoning district, and what is proposed this evening is not necessarily variances for the pool. The pool's in, the pool conforms, all the setbacks to the pool are proper and appropriate. It's some of the accessory development around the pool to make it a kind of a pool lot, a recreational lot, is what is being asked for tonight. The first one that Roger mentioned is the distance of the garage, the face of the garage from the rear lot line. The intent of that provision of the ordinance originally was to make sure people didn't creep their garage up to the front of the lot to make it their backyard bigger and then limit the size of the parking spaces in the front. Okay, so it kind of forces the garage to the rear lot line. With the wetlands that you see on the plan, the garage is as far back as it can go, meeting the intent of the ordinance, and still leaving a full parking space in front at 18 or 20 feet. So I believe in that situation, the intent of the ordinance is met, because garage can't go back any further because, as Roger said, the rear lot line is in Main Creek. So we pushed it as far back as we can without encroaching into the wetlands buffer or the wetlands. The second variance that's cut out is the second curb cut to the new driveway to the garage. Again, if this were 2 lots, you'd be allowed to have 20 feet on each lot,
Yes.
and we are asking for 32 total versus 40 total that would otherwise be permitted. The third variance is for the fence setback on the pool area. It's just for the limited area where the pool is, for a 5-foot setback to the fence, and that's actually 3 feet off the right-of-way, so from the sidewalk, it appears more like it's 8 feet back, so it's not jumping on top of the sidewalk. What I think you want to look at with that is, it's just a waste of 15 feet of grass that the kids won't get to use, and nobody really gets to use. If they had to bring this fence all the way back to 15 feet, you have a nice grassy area for really nobody who walks on the sidewalk back there. It's a very quiet area for their use. It seems that in this particular location, it might be appropriate to allow the fence setback just for that limited pool area.
So no matter where that fence is, it's going to be landscaped on both sides?
In front of it, that's right.
Both sides.
Landscaping on both sides of it.
Right.
Correct. And finally, Roger mentioned the fact that there's an integrated garage in the house. He refers then to the provision of the ordinance that speaks to when there's parking under the house, you can't have a detached garage. I think the intent of that provision was when the houses are raised and you put the cars under the house, you can't then have a detached garage. This speaks to the older style houses that have a garage face within the house and a second floor above it. I think it's a little bit different. More importantly, in this situation, this garage was deconverted before they even acquired the house.
I didn't hear what you said.
This garage has been deconverted before they acquired the house. There are cabinets, closets, storage spaces in that integrated garage that preclude a park, it's not a parking space. It can't be used as a parking space. And they're willing to designate it as such, as at-grade storage on the plan going forward, to eliminate it as a garage.
How many parking spots do they need?
John, do you have the parking count?
2.
We need 2. We have,
You have two legal spaces.
we need 2, we have 2 legal. We also have 2 short spaces that are existing, non-conforming, so to speak. On that pad right in front of the house. So the parking conforms, even without that garage.
That's
conform.
not the problem. There's no garage there, and you have all that cement there, and the purpose of the second garage was to have more green area.
Say it again?
The purpose of the ordinance to have no second garages was to have more green area. Totally understand that. It's not a garage,
Right.
but you've got this giant concrete area there and a garage. I mean, do they
I-
need all that parking? I know, look, I hate saying
It can be,
parking, but
the point is it can be parked on. It is utilized for parking.
I don't mean can it be parked on, I mean, can it be made smaller?
Doesn't mean it's smaller. You can talk about that. With their variances, I think with the application, like I said, the pool is in, the pool conforms. They are the ancillary variances that go with the development of that lot. I mean, look, everybody's gonna say, hey, we could have put a house there. We could have sold it and had a spec house there. That's not happening. They acquired the lot from family to do.
Oh,
just-
this is great.
To do just this.
Yeah.
And we don't think this is too much of a reach to bring in front of the board. John?
Well, correct, I just want to put on the record that the face of the garage is actually 39 feet from the rear lot
Not
line.
29, 39, correct.
John, just your name and address for the record, I'll swear you in.
John Barnhart, Arthur Ponzio Company and Associates, 400 North Dover Avenue, Atlantic City.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Parrish, the board will accept John's credentials.
This thing fixed?
As a planner and engineer.
Yes, I do. We do.
Mr. Barnhart, your office prepared the plan that was submitted to the board for their consideration.
Yes, we did.
Would you kindly take the board through that plan and then both projects?
Sure. Chris kind of gave you all the details already, so what we've done here is we've taken the plan that was submitted and shaded in what we're here to propose this evening. I'll start first with the garage structure. As Chris pointed out, the garage location is further forward on the lot than is permitted by current ordinance. As Chris also mentioned, you have some unique conditions with this property. You can see where Samara's existing house is. You can see where the adjacent house is, but then the wetlands kind of jumps in a little bit on this piece of property. So it creates, for the garage location, it creates what we believe to be a hardship condition or a C1 type of variance, where we are proposing the garage as far back as reasonable and feasible, but the intent of the ordinance, as we see it, is being met because we still have 18 feet in the front for one parking space and then the garage to exist. So we believe, as a classic C1 type of hardship, the variance can be justified for the garage. Chris gave you a synopsis with regard to the garage being permitted or not permitted. We've talked about that already. I'm sure there's going to be some more discussion. Even if the garage is, even if it's determined, or if the board makes a decision that that's an existing garage and this one is not permitted, what I would argue is, and really this goes along with the fence variance that we're requesting as well. This is a situation where you really have to look at the balance of these variances, in my opinion, as a true C2, because the benefits of what our client has done here by taking this property, saying, you know what, I'm not interested in trying to fit another house on here, and because what would have happened is they would have come in and they would have been asking for front yard setback variances, and they would have called them hardship variances because of the wetlands behind it. So we would have not had a fence at 5 feet. We would have been asking for a house at 5 feet. So you have to look at this project as a whole. A fence 5 feet back from the front property line, I recognize the board is not typically very interested in hearing that, but at this specific location, given these specific circumstances, we do believe that it is appropriate. So let's talk about the fence for a second. So the proposal is that the fence will go 5 feet back from the front property line. But keep in mind, the physical location of the fence would actually be 8 feet behind the back of sidewalk. You then have about a 4-foot sidewalk and a 2 or 3 foot landscape strip. So if you're walking along the sidewalk, along the front of our client's property, the fence would actually be 8 feet back from the concrete. That would all be landscaping and then probably a small strip of lawn area between the property line and the edge of sidewalk. then the 5-foot fence, which is not a hard fence. It is a partial privacy fence with wide slats and then small openings, so some air does get through the fence. In the front of the fence is proposed to be an arborvitae hedgerow, which will help kind of soften the fence, and then some low plantings in front of that. And then behind the fence, as was indicated, is some additional greenery and landscaping area for use and enjoyment of their family.
And we could work with Mr. McLaren on the site triangle issue that you raised with respect to the plantings behind the plantings.
Yeah, so, so from a practical standpoint, if you were to move the fence back, okay, it does open up and have a little bit more green space in front of the fence. Obviously, it creates a much less of a nice condition on the inside of the fence, which is not the board's concern. But when we look at this, we say, okay, is there really a negative associated with what we're asking for with regard to the fence position? And, you know, from a planning perspective, because of the type of fence, because of the planting that they're proposing, because of the location of the sidewalk, and because of the underlying or overlying circumstances of the fact that we're requesting a 5-foot fence and not a 30-foot high building on the site any longer, we believe that the variances can be granted. With regard to the curb cut, as Chris pointed out also, we're proposing an additional curb cut for a total of 32 feet. We have an existing 22-foot wide curb cut. We're requesting one more at 10 feet. As a 120-foot wide lot, you know, you really would be looking at a situation where you'd be legally permitted 40 feet in curb cut. So we're 8 feet short of what 2 60-foot wide lots on Exeter Avenue would be. So I think we meet the intent of the ordinance with regard to the amount of curb cut per location. But the other thing I want to point out in talking with our client is that they have 3 vehicles. One of those vehicles parks on the street now. Two of them park in their existing driveway. So this curb cut takes that third vehicle off the street, gives them the space for it. So while we're opening up a curb cut on the street, we're taking a car off the street that is currently parked on the street in current conditions. So, you know, this is a balancing condition of, do the benefits of what we're requesting outweigh the potential detriments? We don't see that there's any real impact to the neighborhood or to the public good. We don't see a negative impact to the zone plan or the zoning ordinance, because we do have a unique condition here where we consolidated a lot. We have a lot that would have had very valid hardship conditions if we had proposed to develop it for single-family home, which would be permitted on the lot.
John, this is one of the cases where the case law allows you to look at the variances as a whole, not individually necessary, to see if it's a better plan of development for this lot than would be looking at each individual variance separately.
That's correct.
Members of the board, that's the variance proposal that you've heard. We don't really have any other direct testimony. The Dickers are here. They're year-round family, 3 children, and that additional yard area would be a wonderful additional 7 feet for the kids to play in. Just get out of the house, get in the yard, kind of thing. And it just works better for some families, and this is one of those cases. Mr. Patterson, we can deal with the issue you talked about as well, if you decide to raise that.
I don't think it's a problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Would the applicant be willing to put in 4 street trees for the 2 properties?
Scattered throughout the property in the front?
Yes.
Sure. Are there any street trees out front right now? No.
Also would like to point out that the 5-foot setback is the minimum required, so they are meeting the minimum,
Thank you.
just not the prevailing.
Any questions from the board? Anyone here from the audience like to comment? Come up, state your name, be sworn in, and then you can speak.
Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Ellen Lichtenstein at 411 North Exeter Avenue.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you.
Okay.
I live across the street from the pool. It's a beautiful pool, magnificent, actually. It's covering the entire property, and that's most of the issues that we have right now. We already have runoff issues. We've had them, and I've already applied for the city last December or January when they started the program to help alleviate some of the runoff and recurb and
Which
regutter.
issues?
I'm sorry?
What issues? I didn't understand.
Runoff.
Runoff.
Yeah. So we already have issues with that already, and now that most of the property is covered over, we anticipate even more issues. As regarding the proposal with the garage, they've already blacktopped over that property. So whereas the new plans have a strip of grass, there is no way there would be grass put in there. That's already done. In fact, all of the pavers are on top of unpermeable land now, as with the new property if they pushed back the fence. As far as the fence goes, none of the properties on our block has a fence that juts out further than the front of the house. This is a big change on the block. It's a large expanse of a fence, probably the size of this room. They have ample parking spaces. They have 2 parking spaces in their driveway. They have an abandoned car in the front of their house that's been there for 5 years. And they have the entire property where the pool is to be able to park in front of that. There's really no reason for that extra space that's already covered over to be a garage. We are strongly supported by the neighbors that are permanent year-round neighbors as we are, and are very concerned with all of this land being covered over. I think we're already past the 35%, much less than that, and probably will be even less so if you allow them to push that fence back, because everything is concreted over, and I believe that there's pavers waiting to be put there as well. Thank you very much.
Roger.
That statement's inaccurate. They are meeting the 35% landscape rules.
State your name and address and be sworn in, please.
Greg Lichtenstein, 411 North Exeter Avenue.
Greg was your first name?
Yes.
You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we would like to know, specifically with regard to 35%, who actually did the measurement of the 35%? And so that's one question we have. But we have, I have 4 concerns that I wanted to raise. First of all, it's our understanding, it was a little not clear about some of the discussion, but the city regulations specify 1 garage per household, and the Dickers already have a garage that was admitted, and which is not indicated on the plans they submitted. Second of all, a detached garage sitting on the very far border of the lot, literally right up against their neighbor's lot, doesn't it all fit in with the look of the neighborhood? And it's going to stick out and, we think, negatively affect the aesthetics of the neighborhood. Third, with plumbing and electrical service to the garage, we want to know what's going to stop the garage from being used as a guest house or a man cave, and we're concerned that people might be living in that space. And finally, we have a concern about the shower, which is located in the back of the property, right next to Minnie Creek, and the neighbor's back porch. And we want to know what's to keep the soap and the chemicals from actually draining into the creek and damaging the wildlife. Those are 4 concerns that we have. Thank you.
Is there plumbing in the garage?
There will be a French drain for the outdoor shower.
You need to be sworn in.
I can address it.
Yeah,
There
Chris.
is a required French drain for the outdoor shower.
Oh, will there be running water in the garage?
Is there plumbing service in the garage? No, none proposed.
Can we make that a condition, Chris? Sure. That it will be not connected to the sewer line?
To the sewer line?
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyone else from the neighborhood? Public portion is closed. Ron?
Thank you. I want to talk about the fence. Who put the fence in? Who was the contractor? Did you own the house when the fence?
One is there now? One is there now?
Yeah, were you the owner when the fence went in?
It has to be sworn, yeah, you can swear in.
Dan, just state your name and address for the record. I'll swear you in.
Dan Dicker, 408 North Exeter?
And do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Did you own the property when the fence was put in?
Yeah, Don Kelly put it in.
It's Groundhog Day again with this guy, you know, and do you know if he pulled permits to put it in?
He was supposed to pull all the permits for all the fencing, for all the.
Full service.
Full service.
Because I'm surprised that it got approved.
It
To be
did.
put in.
Is that the fence that gets, will that fence be removed?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
the
that goes
fence.
up.
It was just put up as protection from the public for not falling into the pool.
But it was still put up illegally.
That's between the contractor.
That's a temporary fence, that's
It's
permitted.
a temporary fence.
Still went up without permits and without approval, so it's.
Actually, Jimmy made him put the temporary fence in.
Yeah.
The concern that I had was Don wasn't following the permitted location of the fence,
So the fence was supposed to be lined up with the house,
the permanent fence.
so it was arbitrarily just moved to the point where it's moved as a temporary fence with the intention that it would stay there.
No, it's actually going to be moved forward.
It's gonna be moved forward.
No, Jimmy was aware that this.
The problem I have with this particular issue is that it's the same guy and it's Groundhog's Day, and he's never here to defend what he did. And this is a crawl on my side that this isn't the first time we've had this issue. And it's actually between the homeowner and the guy that put the fence up as to what happened and why it ended up where it's at. So it's not our responsibility to make it right when the guy knew he was doing the wrong thing. So,
I don't think this, we're not asking for that, we're not asking for that.
no, you're asking for a variance, and if we don't grant the variance, you're asking for the fence to stay where it's at.
No,
No, the fence would have to be conformed, the fence would.
fence would have to go back to the house
Yes.
if we don't agree
The
with
fence
the
would have, the fence
variance.
would be cited, and we'd have to move it to a conforming location.
That was a temporary fence that Jim Galantino made him put there.
So if it's not approved to come up to 5 feet, then it has to go back to where it was approved to be at.
Exactly.
That's
If
right.
there's no variance for the fence, it goes back to the
Thank you.
property line.
Thanks, Dan.
Or, I'm sorry, to the front of the house.
Okay.
Anyone else? You call the roll, please. Or make a motion, please.
I'll make a motion.
I can frame it. All right, someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following. Setback to the face of the detached garage where the maximum permitted distance from the rear property line to the face of the detached garage is 26 feet and 39 feet is proposed. For a variance to permit the detached garage where technically under the ordinance it's not permitted if there's already one located below the building. For a variance for the fence location to be 5 feet from the front property line in front of the pool, and for a driveway curb cut width of 32 feet total, where 22 feet is permitted. There'll be a waiver from the application checklist. The conditions will be anything in Mr. McLaren's report that hasn't, unless otherwise addressed tonight. The applicant will provide for 4 street trees in front of the property scattered. And as Mr. Cristaldi recommended, the garage will not be connected to any sewer line.
The existing garage in the house is deconverted.
You're going to make that a condition too, sure. So the existing garage will be restricted to storage or deconverted.
It's already been deconverted, correct?
It's
Pretty
been
much.
deconverted, but recognized as deconverted, yes, correct.
And also a condition is the concrete on the north side of the property is removed to comply with landscaping.
So stated. So someone needs to make that motion, and we need a second.
Mike? Make the motion.
I'll make a motion that, can we bring up that, instead of making it one vote, do the garage, the fence, as separate votes? Would you do that, Chris?
Yeah, sure, if it's,
I-
if the board thinks that's necessary, yes.
I recommend that you do, but it'll be up to Rich.
Is this a particular variance you want to separate out?
Yeah,
Let me know what it is.
I think I'll discuss it.
I think the fence should be a separate,
That's the board prerogative, that's fine, we agree.
Do you want just the fence to be a separate? Just the fence you're talking
Just
about?
the fence, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the pool was put in before, so I think it should be separate.
I have no problem with it if Chris has no problem with it.
All right.
Could you explain it a little more what you mean?
Yeah, do you want to have discussion on that?
Yeah, I do. I want to, I'm not quite sure what you mean.
They put the pool in knowing where the fence would be. Now they're coming in and looking for a new line on the fence.
Right, but how
Which-
close is the pool to the back? Not property line, but to the.
They've got
visible
plenty of
area?
room in the back, it's just that it's been washed out by Mother Nature.
No, I mean usable land, not property line.
They've got enough for the 6 feet in the back for the pool.
But that location was approved by CAFR, and it had to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
away.
Okay.
It's really just an opportunity to use that grass area for yard area.
It's not like the pool could be pushed back anymore.
No, it can't.
Okay.
Be ashamed to have that not be able to be used by the family. It's just-
I
it doesn't
agree,
make sense.
I agree.
Okay. You want to separate us?
I don't think so. I think it should be one vote.
So, Jerry,
That's my decision.
All right, I stated the 4 variances, it's going to be, and the conditions. Someone needs to make that motion in a second.
I'll make that motion.
Are we doing one vote or two?
One
vote.
Okay. Clem Wazleski,
I'm alive. The only real issue here I see is with the fence. I don't have any problem with the garage or the parking and so on, but if that fence is moved out to within 5 feet, which is pretty much an arbitrary number, probably derived from what is a minimum, we're going to decrease the amount of ground that can be landscaped. We're going to increase the impervious surface. The existing fence is already in front of the line of the house where it should be limited to. So I have to vote no on the application.
Rich Patterson,
Well, from the testimony, the fact that existing, I didn't realize that the existing garage was a pre-existing condition before they owned the house. So if that wasn't the case, I would have a problem with the garage. I don't have a problem with the garage, and it's pushed back as far as it can be. Visually, the fence is 8 feet back. Whether the fence is at the house line or eight feet back from the property line, you still have a 40-foot, 80-foot fence, whatever it is there, and it's going to be landscaped in front of it. From my understanding of the testimony also, they do meet the pervious requirement. They have 35% landscaping coverage, correct?
Yes.
So that already exists. They're not getting a variance for that. I see a benefit to the neighborhood. I really don't see a detriment. I see a benefit of not having a house there, not having more traffic, not having more congestion. I really think it's a benefit to the neighborhood to have one bigger property and not have land on it. So I don't see the negative problems here, so I vote in favor of the application.
Mike Cristaldi,
I have no problem with the garage, and I have no problem with any of the other problems. But I don't see us setting a precedent on fences being out in the front yard, and that's all we're gonna be doing by approving that.
There's no such thing as a precedent at the planning board. It just doesn't exist.
I understand. I apologize on that, but my vote is no.
Joe DiGirolamo,
In looking at this application, we saw a couple of the residents from the neighborhood complain about various issues with this particular proposal here. And I guess the biggest concern that we all would have is the fence. I think that it appears as though the shower runoff was going to be taken care of, so that's not an issue. It is just the fence and the fence line, and based on that, I can't vote for this proposal. I say no.
Ron Grupo?
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Cristaldi that the pool was put in knowing where the fence was supposed to be. A couple extra feet were encroached on for the temporary fence. I'm fine with everything else in the variance requests, but I'm not fine with the fence, and because of that, I have to vote no.
Stephen Giuseppe?
For the reasons stated, I also will vote no.
Application does not pass.
Mr. Chair, since the
One
applicant was agreeable to
five.
a separate vote on the fence and the chair overruled the applicant's request, could we take a vote without the fence included? Because it really kills the project otherwise, and
I have
have to
no
ask.
problem with that.
Oh.
If Leo says it's okay, I have no
Thank you.
problem with that. I don't,
The board has discretion if they want to reconsider and take a separate vote. If their issue was on one aspect of it,
So vote on the
the result of this is they can do
Vote
nothing.
on the application without the fence variance.
if we're legal, if Leo says we could do it, I have no problem with that.
I have no problem.
They can relocate the fence, they can't relocate the garage. So that's a fair request, I believe, from a planning perspective.
Right, from the
Or if there's a number that's in everybody's head where the fence should be, as opposed to back at 15, well, I'll take that input as well. But
Can we discuss that, or does that,
Sure.
or is it too late?
Yeah, we can discuss it. You know, I think we should discuss it, because, as Roger said, you can move the fence, the garage is there. So if you want to have some discussion, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to say that the pool is already moved back as far as it can go if you want to have chairs in front of it. If you have the fence along the pool edge, you can't have any chairs there. It completely takes any use away from the pool, any area around the pool. I think it's a hardship that they are pushed forward so far, and to put that fence back at the house line, I think is a disgrace.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's the distance between the fence and the pool?
What's the distance between the fence and the pool if it's at the house line?
Looks like it's about 3 feet.
Yeah.
what's the distance from the pool with the back fence?
6 feet.
6 feet?
Yeah, that's where you can put a chair. What works?
The difference between the edge of pavers and the fence request is 7.2 feet.
Right, the difference-
If you split that difference, make it 8 feet back, so you have the 8 feet plus the 3 feet, it's gonna look like it's 11, 12 feet back from the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's not 5 feet back, by appearances, it's 8 feet back.
Correct.
Push it back 5 more feet, or 3 more feet, Roger?
How much space does that give them? That gives them 6 feet on each side?
About 6 feet. If it goes back 3.
Well, how's the board feel about giving them 6 feet on each side of the pool? That's just a suggestion. I mean, how's the board feel?
Front yard, does that come then?
That'll be about 9 feet.
So where's that, the existing temporary fence is about 6 feet.
Right.
From
Stephen.
the water's edge,
Where was temporary fence?
by scale.
Temporary fence is 12, that's 3 feet off. Temporary fence is 12, the house is 15. Just like on that plan, if you put away the temporary
Joe,
fences, that picks up that
microphone.
3 feet.
Chris, microphone, please.
Well, instead of using it that way, can we say 6 feet from the pool all the way around?
How far in the front yard does that come past the house?
Feet?
If you push the fence back 3 more feet, 8-foot setback, that'll give it's about 7 foot in front of the house,
7 foot in front of the house.
in front of the house. That'll give them about,
Fence out 7 foot in front of the house?
yes, that'll give them about 9 feet of usable space, which will still be landscaped.
Right.
You'll have about 6 feet of pavers, 3 feet of grass. Provides a safer issue with the driveway backing in and out.
I know by our ordinance, it's 5 foot. Make that a condition, not above 5 feet
5 feet what?
on the fence
For height.
for height. And open balusters and a 5 foot. And
Well, I think they'd agree to anything.
trying to make it more open air, not,
It's fine.
So an open fence, 5 feet, they're gonna have,
If you look at the pictures they submitted, you want the same type of fence they had along the back?
yeah.
So it goes back.
But it doesn't have to be
Instead of
6
5
feet.
Instead of 5 feet, where's the setback?
Chris?
5 feet's our
Chris.
ordinance, is the only reason I'm saying that.
no, he's talking about fence height.
Okay. I'm talking about the setback now, as opposed to 5 feet, it would be what?
8.
8,
Well,
okay.
Yeah.
The only resistance I get is, Mike, is for the children and the open fence.
The 3, 5, and 7-year-old, we gotta have semi-privacy.
It'd be a semi-private?
Filming us. we're
I
videoing
can't
us.
have discussion from,
I mean, that's just a safety issue.
It's gonna have arborvitae
Landscape
in
in front
front.
of it anyway.
It's gonna have
I
arborvitae in
I
front of it.
understand that. I totally
Is there-
understand.
is there-
that. I don't-
Mike, is there an alternative that you're aware of that would work and address the children's needs?
Yeah, they're gonna have the arborvitae's, that'll cut out everybody. But if the arborvitae's aren't there, which we can't control,
Right.
then we've gotta look at another white fence in a front yard that just makes you go, what?
Well,
I'm just I'm trying to control that now,
I understand.
not later.
It's not gonna be board on board. It will be semi-private. It will be,
Our ordinance is 5 feet on a fence. We do an open baluster fence
right?
with the right code.
Just as
We
a
have the
side note,
arborvitae's.
I had that fence with a pool with a tiny dog, and the kids and dog could not get through that fence.
No problem,
Yeah,
no problem,
It just didn't happen.
problem.
Yeah.
no problem.
Do we-
Well, you're gonna put your arborvitae's in.
All right, that's fine, Mike.
but I mean, you move and then
Mike.
somebody moves in there
Mike,
and they just decide to put a fence.
Mike, it's okay.
Got it.
It's okay. So if the board would, take another vote on the whole thing with the amendment, that would be fine, just for brevity. Is it the motion amended?
Yeah, and the fence, so the fence now is gonna be an 8-foot setback.
Setback versus 5.
And it's
versus
gonna
5,
be
and
the
it's
same fence as what's on the Long Mini Creek. 5 feet high.
Same type fence.
Thanks, Mike.
And then, just, and for the record, the board does have discretion to allow a reconsideration and a revote. The alternative is you're making the applicant come back, file a brand-new application, which they'd be entitled to do by moving it back 8 feet, repay the fees, renotice. It would just be a waste of time, in my opinion, so the board does have the right to do this within its discretion. So, on a second vote, someone needs to make a motion. The same variances, except the fence location will be,
No, we're gonna do
8
2 votes still, or it's a,
You can do one vote and just with the.
okay.
with the amended fence location, it's gonna be an 8-foot setback instead of the 5-foot setback, and it's gonna be the same type of fence that is along Minnie Creek, and no higher than 5 feet, and the same conditions will apply.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we re-vote on this, would that be correct? And allow for an 8-foot setback for the fence, and all other considerations are put back on for a vote again. Is that,
Correct.
Second that motion.
Clem Wasilewski.
I don't know what I'm voting on.
Clem, we're moving the fence back another 3 feet so that
But is this one vote or 2
it's
votes?
One vote.
one vote.
So
And
it's
this
just,
way the children will have room to play around the fence or around the pool and not have the fence so close to the pool that it's a hazard.
And it remains landscaping inside the fence, but
so the only difference between
And it's
This-
an open fence,
The only difference between this and the first vote is the position of the fence and
and the type of fence.
its type of fence. Well, I think we beat this horse to death. I'll vote for it.
Rich Patterson,
I vote for it for the same reasons I stated before.
Mike Cristaldi,
What they've given up here, I'm okay with it now. I vote yes.
Joe DiGirolamo,
Yeah, with the changes to the setback on the fence, I vote in favor.
Ron Grupo,
I think you guys have been very reasonable, and I think the fence, the different fence type is going to give it more open space, and based on the concessions that were made, I vote yes.
Stephen Giuseppe,
I'm still gonna vote no on this.
application passes 5-1.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Chris, will you please come sign?
Next case is Brad and Michelle Beidner. Oh, I'm sorry.
Are we having? He's going to announce.
Oh. Okay. Eric?
Mr. Chairman, the Biner application, respectfully, I had spoken with Planning Board Administrator, would be postponed until the October meeting. Mr. Valentin represents the neighbors. We're still trying to work something out, so we're going to request that this be postponed. New plans are in. Mr. McLaren has them until the October meeting, and request that we don't have to renotice or re-advertise.
All right, for anyone in the audience, if you're here for the case of Brad and Michelle Beidner at 113 South Essex Avenue, it's been postponed until October.
Which is October, what's the date?
24th.
October
24th.
24th, 6:30 PM in this room. Applicant's not required to republish or renotice. That's something we usually do at the beginning of the meeting, so if anyone is here for that, I do apologize that you had to sit through that first application.
Next case is Orient and Elsie Feibush, 8807 Fulton Avenue, Block 718, Lot 1.01 in the S40 District to grant C relief for deck height on the bulkhead over the open bay, height to the top of the plate, landscaping, and possibly others. Taxes and order are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. McLaren?
Thank you, Board Chairman, Board members. My report is dated September 20th, 2019. For Orient Elise Feibush at 8807 Fulton Avenue, Block 718, Lot 1.01, within the S40-WF zone. Again, this is a new zone that was a result of the master plan and ordinance revisions. FEMA zone, elevation 9, which is the effective firm approved last year. Background, the applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the city of Maargate in order to construct a new single-family dwelling on the bay at 8807 Fulton Avenue. The zoning district has some provisions that differ from the standard S40 zoning requirements due to the repairing portions of the properties creating a hardship by reducing the size of the lot, which we in turn allow for a higher building coverage. Several variances are requested and several other variances have been identified. And it's my understanding as we proceed that the applicant has been revising the plans based on this report to reduce or eliminate some of these variances. The lot was part of a subdivision which enlarged the subject property and reduced the size of the adjacent property, although it was still conforms for bulk standards. Page 1 and page 2 of my report shows the zoning chart. The bottom of page 2 of the documents reviewed to produce this report. Section number 3 is the variances required. Again, this is based on the original application. Front yard to the building, whereas 8.37 feet is the prevailing front yard setback, and the proposed setback to a full-height bay window is 6.87 feet. Again, after each variance, I cite the location of each ordinance. The side yard setback on the right side, whereas the minimum side yard setback is 10 feet and the side yard setback is 6 feet, is proposed. landscape area total, whereas the minimum overall landscape coverage is 35% of the overall property and 23.7 feet is proposed. Building height, whereas the maximum permitted building height from first floor to roof peak is 30 feet with conditions, and the conditions are not being met, therefore a height variance is being required. Rear yard deck height, whereas rear yard decks along Beach Thoroughfare are required to be no higher than BFE plus 20 inches or elevation 10.67, and one is proposed to be BFE plus 57 inches or elevation 13.75. This is based on Chapter 142 of our Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance and 175-33D 3C1. Rear yard deck landing encroachments, whereas the only one 4x4 landing is permitted to be within the rear yard and projected side yard, and 2 landings are proposed. Accessory structure outside shower size, whereas 32 feet is the maximum area permitted for an outdoor shower, and 82.7 square feet is proposed. Variance number 8, accessory structure storage shed, number of, whereas 1 storage shed is permitted on a single-family lot, and 2 are proposed. Accessory structure total area, where 80 square feet is the maximum area permitted for an accessory structure, and about 141 square feet is proposed, plus or minus. Swimming pool clearance, whereas 3-foot clearance is required around the water's edge of the pool, and 0 feet is proposed for about 23 linear feet of the pool perimeter. Waivers requested, none have been requested. Comments are as follows: the storage shed and accessory building used for storage of items such as, but not limited to, tools, lawn and garden equipment, and furniture, and similar items of personal property belongings to an occupant in the principal structure. Again, the ordinance says if the accessory structure is attached to the building, it becomes part of the principal structure, thereby driving the right side yard setback. Although the front yard survey indicates that the prevailing front yard setback for a porch or deck is 8.5 feet, which would make the decks and porches as proposed non-conforming, the ordinance also states that any deck or porch at or behind the face of the front wall of the building does not count towards the prevailing setback. Therefore, the front yard setback defaults to the minimum, which is 5 feet. That's for porches only. The front yard setback at 8.37 feet is being encroached by a bay window, which is a permitted encroachment. However, since a window includes a floor, it is also part of the floor space, and the wall of the window becomes part of the wall of the building, and therefore requires a variance. It is my understanding that that variance goes away. Number 3, the minimum side yard setback is 10 feet for lots 60 feet or wide or more. The air conditioner condenser platform is being used as a roof to an accessory structure. The accessory structure is attached to the principal structure, and by definition, this becomes the outermost wall of the principal structure and requires a variance. It is my understanding that variance is going away by opening up that area below and just having it as a trash can corral, which would be acceptable. The overall landscape requirement of 35% is not being met, and a variance of about 846 square feet of landscaping is being requested for a large property that has over 1,100 square feet of rear yard deck that is being proposed. A height variance is required, as the variance is not the top plate distance, or is not for the top plate distance of 20 feet. That is a condition that is not being met to go from 30 feet from the 28 feet, which is permitted. Therefore, a height variance is required. This still remains a C variance as opposed to a D6 variance. It's my understanding that variance is remaining. And jumping back up to the variance number 4 for landscape, and I heard, it's my understanding that is being reduced, but it's still not being met. Item number 6, the proposed rear yard deck along Beach Thoroughfare requires a variance similar to Pisani along North Benham Avenue. Since this application was not submitted between flood maps, the revised ordinance as of August 2018 requires the effective firm to be used to determine the height. The ordinance permits 20 inches above BFE, which is elevation 9, and a variance of 37 inches or 57 inches above BFE is requested, BFE meaning base flood elevation. Actual elevations are 10.67 feet required and 13.7 feet is requested. The plans are not clear as whether the sides of the deck will be enclosed or not. Again, that testimony will provide that. If they are and there is not any exterior access, as in Pisani's case, then a rear yard setback for the principal structure would be required. Also related to the rear deck are the steps encroaching into the projected side yard setback, whereas one set is permitted and two sets are proposed. It's my understanding that is being resolved with the revised plans. There are two outside showers shown on the plan. They exceed the maximum allowable area by quite a bit. The exterior showers are also part of the larger accessory structure being used as storage, which also requires a variance due to the number of sheds proposed. It's my belief that that the number of showers in the area would have any impact on anyone else as they're hidden from view, but they are addressing this variance as well by moving the exterior wall out and enclosing those as part of the building envelope, eliminating that variance. The proposed swimming pool does not provide the adequate clearance of 3 feet around the water's edge required by the city's zoning ordinance and requires a variance. There is 9 feet of clearance between the grade and the proposed rear yard deck. Plan sheet SD1 indicates pool above and hot tub above. I made a comment that I doubt the pool will be floating in the air and a foundation will be required. I think the board needs some clarity on how deep that pool is, and is it going to be a solid wall? It's my understanding that a solid 9-foot wall will be supporting the pool and hot tub, whether the pool depth is 3 feet or 12 feet. Again, I'm putting my engineering hat on. How do you address that? And also, will the pool equipment be below the deck or recessed within the deck? That needs to be clarified. Where will the trash and recycling be stored? Again, my conversation with the architect, I think we resolved that issue with the side yard enclosure area being open, and the testimony will provide clarity to that. The plans do not show proposed street trees. I believe that at least 6 trees based on the standard lot width of 40 feet, requiring 2. Submission of a landscape plan should be a condition of approval. The rear yard setback is predicated on location of the face of the bulkhead sheets. Is a new bulkhead being considered? Will it be 2 feet further out? It appears that the existing bulkhead does not meet the required height of elevation 8 NAVD 88. There appears to be a jog in the bulkhead, and the 10-foot minimum must be maintained. Item number 16, we can skip over that. Item number 17, a rendering of all sides of the rear yard deck shall be provided, indicate the ground cover material of the area below the deck. Again, our ordinance requires that that area be open and pervious. All roof gutters and leaders may be extended through a watertight opening in the bulkhead, and an overflow device shall be provided at each leader no lower than elevation 8.0 NAVD 88. Again, that reflects the minimum height requirement for our bulkheads. Also provide the materials and subbase of the driveway and sidewalk areas, particularly in the public right-of-way, which is required to be on concrete. The city is considering revising the rear yard deck heights along the waterfront and removing the correlation from BFE elevations to bulkhead height requirements. Again, that's open to further discussion. That's not an ordinance yet. No, it's just making you aware. A grading plan should be required for such a large area of disturbance. No runoff from the exterior showers shall be permitted to enter the tidal waters. The plan shows steps leading down to presumably fixed pier, which is not shown on the plans. Please show a schematic of the proposed pier and dock configuration so the planning board can get an idea of what's going on water side of the bulkhead, even though it's not their jurisdiction. The steps are. No riparian structures exist on the site. It is not known if any are proposed. I was looking at historical photos. There were 2 piers there before, so I presume that they will be allowed to replace those at some point in time. And again, my recommendations are in my report, and I defer to the applicant at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. McLarnon. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman. Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicants, Ori and Elise Feibush. So Roger went through a number of variances that were originally identified. We're going to walk through them in a second, but we're currently down to 4 variances. The original plan had a lot of stuff which, over the past 48 hours, working with Roger, the architect and designer, have removed the need for these variances, most of which by way of just simple elimination. And we'll get to that.
Eric, can we go through Roger's list here, and can you tell us which ones have been eliminated?
Yes, we can do that now, or we can do.
Can we do that right now?
Okay.
I would go to section 3, page 3. Where I actually listed there.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, respectfully, Mr. Barnhart, who is already sworn, but we need to have him sworn in here, can walk through that, and then we can go through with the designer and the architect the exact particulars of the plan, if that's okay.
Well, that's okay, but I want to know what we're
Yeah.
not concerned about anymore. So be sworn in.
So, John,
Mr. Barnhart, just state your name real quick for the record.
Barnhart, Arthur Ponzio Company and Associates, 400 North Dover Avenue, Atlantic City.
And you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
If you go into Mr. McLaren's report, page 3, section 3, a variance is required.
John, can you use the microphone? We're not
And
being
John's planner, recognized planner and engineer for
We
the
accept
record.
his credentials. If you would go through one to whatever and just say one out, two
Sure.
in.
Yes, one has been deleted. 2 has been deleted. Variances 3, 4, and 5 are still being requested. 6 has been deleted. 7 has been deleted. 8 has been deleted. 9 has been deleted. And we are still requesting number 10. So there are a total of 4 variances requested versus the 10 that were determined as when Mr. McLaren prepared his report.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
That's going to make it easier going through.
Sure. So, to follow up on what Mr. Barnhart just said, when Mr. McLaren first got back to us with the report, the applicant being obviously concerned that didn't want to make it look as if there was more going on than there was, directed his designer, engineer, and architect to go back and forth on a fairly short time frame with the city to try to make the application as acceptable as possible, knowing that there were certain things that could come off right away and certain items which he would like to continue to request. So, having said that, I had passed out earlier revised plans which take into consideration the removal, excuse me, of those other 6 variances. So the plans you have in front of you, the legal size color prints, show what we're actually asking for now, which are those 4 variances. Having said that, with regard to the design of the property, I'd like Steve Black, who designed the project, to walk us through step by step what we're looking for here. Steve is also from his office. Brett Harmon, who's a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey, will be here to testify. He signed and sealed the plans. And then, of course, Mr. Barnhart will walk us through the engineering aspect, including what's proposed for the in-water structures. And Mr. Feibush is here as well to answer any questions that might come up. See, there's a lot of neighbors here. Hopefully, they're here to support us, so we'll see how we do as the application moves forward. So having said that, I'd like to have Steve Black sworn in and walk us through the house itself, step by step of what we're asking for and how we think that satisfies the municipal land use law and the zone plan of the city of Maargate. So grab your microphone, please, and Mr. Manos, if you wouldn't mind swearing him in, please.
Sure, just state your name and address for the record, or business address for the record.
Name is Steve Black with Harmon Deutsch Oler Architects, 1225 North 7th Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Just by way of background, I'm not sure if you've testified before this board in the past. Tell them about your educational background and how you put these plans together.
Sure, I went to Drexel University and have a professional degree in architecture. I work under Mr. Brett Harmon over here, the registered architect of a record for the project.
So you designed the plan, Mr. Harmon puts it on paper and seals it, so we have a New Jersey licensed architect who's signing all the plans, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So as a, sorry, Mr. Patrick. Oh, so as the designer of the project, just conceptually, please, walk us through how you put the plan together, focusing not on what we originally submitted, because obviously those 6 requests for variances are moot, but the 4 that remain. But talk about the house in general, how we plan to fit this on the lot, and how we feel that this is a better planning alternative than what could be built by right.
Sure, so the plan is definitely, you know, working hand in hand with the client, of course, Mr. Feibush here. We were looking for a beautiful house for him and his family and have great views out into the channel. As you can see, the house is a 6-bedroom, 6-bedroom house with 4-car parking. And really, it's meant to maximize his family life and to create an enjoyment and to enhance the betterment of the neighborhood in general.
So we've got a plan that's up now. Why don't you walk us through what we're looking at by way of your design, and obviously how bedroom count, parking, setbacks, all fit into what we believe is an advancement of the plan.
So right now, this is the lower level that you can see. Of course, on the right side, you have the 4-car parking, 2 of which are in an exterior carport and 2 are in a interior garage. The rest of it is basically just a lower entry and some accessory storage space. For the remainder of the house, of course, it's not habitable space.
And just so the board's aware, there's nothing proposed for that first level other than storage. It won't be conditioned space. And
Eric,
obviously
you're
the-
not being picked up.
I'm sorry. That first level is non-conditioned, non-habitable space, and Mr. Feibush is going to acknowledge that as a condition of any construction, he'll have to sign a non-conversion agreement, so that doesn't become living space, correct?
That's correct.
We're not trying to sneak in an extra floor, basically.
No, it's on in the base flood, below the base flood elevation, so of course you can't, build anything there.
Okay, sorry, continue.
So sheet SD 1.1 is our main first floor. That's basically the living floor. We have the kitchen, dining, and living room. There's also a gym space and a laundry room. Basically everything accessory for everyday life. And of course, on the back is the deck space and pool. Okay, sheet SD 1.2 is the second floor. That's where we find our 6 bedrooms. And there's another deck at the second floor rear. Again, like I said in the beginning, all this is meant to maximize views towards the channel and just build a beautiful experience for Ori and his family.
Now,
Is that where you have those cutouts in the second floor deck? It says open to below. Is the pool underneath there?
That's correct.
So there's just a railing and you could jump into the pool from that deck?
Well, there's a guardrail, so just like any open-sided surface, there'll be a 36-inch high guardrail.
With a pool directly underneath?
That's correct.
so obviously, we talked about this when we were designing the house. You could have gone with a 2.5-story, what they call the 3-story house, but Ori and his wife and their wisdom thought to do it 2 stories only, correct?
That's correct.
2 stories over the garage and parking. And as part of the 2-story construction, because the height of the floors, floor to ceiling is higher, we run into an issue with the plate height, correct?
Right.
Okay, just explain that if you would, please.
So, right, just to create the kind of spaces that we wanted and just to make it solely a 2-story structure, it caused the second floor top of plate to be above what is technically allowed for a 30-foot high structure.
But if the house were to be 2.5 stories and the plate height were acceptable, you could go 30 feet over the parking, correct?
That's correct.
So the height would be the exact same height as we're proposing now.
Right.
Just the inside of the house would be set up a little different.
That's right.
Okay.
So the top of the ridge is still at 30 feet, but the plate height is higher than what's required, is that what you're saying?
Correct. So it's a.
And what's the?
I'm sorry, Mr. Patterson. A larger house, floor to ceiling for the first 2 stories, rather than to try to cram everything in. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that you're still not going above 30 feet.
That's correct.
Right, okay.
Not anywhere on the house. There's
And
no
what's
part
the
of-
roof pitch?
It's 812.
812?
812.
And
Yes.
there's 5s
So-
in there also.
Yeah. So it's,
There's
it's
5
correct, but it's, none of it's beneath 512.
And the plate height to get achieved to be allowed to go 30 feet is 20 feet?
Correct.
And what's your plate height?
22.
Or about 22.
22.
And what's the ceiling heights on the 2 floors?
12.
The first floor is a 12-foot ceiling height. The second floor is a 9-foot.
Need some tall cleaning people. I'm sorry.
Okay.
If the board has any further questions for Mr. Black, he can certainly answer them. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Barnhart at this time, if that's okay.
Yeah, I got some questions.
Sure.
What, with the pool, you know, we have the regulation about having a 3 feet walkway.
Right.
Okay, so, I mean, how big is the pool?
By 12.
It's almost 12 feet by 27.
It's only 12 feet wide?
Correct.
Okay. So what area are you not in? So on the right-hand, like, if you're coming towards the house, on the right-hand side, you're abutting the house there, so there's no walkway, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and then in the back of the house, there's no walkway?
So if you're looking at the first floor plan, SD
Right.
1.1, you
Yeah.
can see now on the revised plans, along the 2 walls on the foyer and along the stair,
Right.
those are the spots.
Could you say that again?
Sure.
Could you point it out?
So right here,
Right.
Right?
along the foyer, and then here along the stair.
So
And
why,
along
why,
the-
why couldn't you come in like 3 feet where the foyer, let's call that front area there, and then just come in 3 feet on the side? I mean, I would still give, I'm assuming you want to do laps in the pool. That's still going to, you know, allow you to do laps in the pool, but it's going to conform to our, you know, I mean, we put a lot of time and thought into requiring that you have that 3 feet clearance for safety reasons. So, you know, that's a suggestion. So we got the height, we got the pool, the landscaping. I mean, do you see any other way to, how much more square footage do you need to come into conformance with the landscaping?
864?
We would need about 600.
Say what?
Sorry, we would need about 600 more square feet.
Okay.
How many square feet of the lot is usable? I know it's 7,000 feet, but is some of that over the water?
No, we can't.
That's
use
all
any-
upland? So the lot size is, what's the square footage again?
Patterson.
7,484.
7,400?
484 square feet.
Okay.
Mr. Barnhart may be able to give you that exact calculation, Mr. Patterson.
7,500 close, that gives me an idea.
What is the thinking with the deck height, instead of being a 10.8?
So my client, Mr. Fivewash, his family has a couple handicapped people, and given the height of the first floor, we're, you know, as you know, we're pretty much fixed. The thinking is that they'll be able to access the entirety of the lot. You know, whether it's the rear deck, the first floor, and everything was designed accordingly, so that's really the thought. Any significant steps onto the deck would start to, you know,
Right, but you know,
disrupt the
everybody
flow.
has that issue if you build, you know, if you build along the bay. Everybody has that issue, right? Like, so everybody's required to be a 10.8, and now we're gonna even make it, we might be making it lower. And, I mean, you got such a big area here, if there's a handicap issue, it looks like you could almost have a situation where you could put a ramp in. So.
Thank you, Mr. Black. So, John, obviously you're sworn in, testified on the earlier case, they've accepted your qualifications, licensed in New Jersey as an expert engineer and planner. Why don't you walk us through the issues that we had discussed earlier after Steve talked about the design with regard to landscape coverage, clearance of pool, and then, of course, the issue with the height of the deck.
Sure. So I'll start first with the landscape coverage. So obviously, you look at this lot, its deeded area is about approximately 12,000 square feet. Big lot. Its upland area is about 7,400 and change at the number, specific numbers on our plan. So about a little over 4,000 square feet of the lot is water area. But even having said that, we still have 7,500 square feet of lot area, which is a big lot, especially on the bayfront. But if you look at the design, and typically on a blank slate, you don't ask for variances for things like lot cover or for landscape coverage. But if you look at the design and you look at what's proposed, from a planning perspective, we think that many of the intents of landscape requirements in your ordinance are really being met here. So why do I say that? Well, first of all, the permitted building coverage here is 50% in the zone. Although this is a big building, this building is, I think, a little over 39% building coverage. So believe it or not, we've got another 11, almost 11% building coverage that we've permitted on the lot. I think the second key factor is we have a requirement of 60% front yard landscape. That's the landscape that the public enjoys when they will drive by and see a beautiful building. We are at 74%, so we're 14% over in front yard landscaping. It's the aggregate or the total lot landscaping that we aren't meeting. So what Mr. Fivebush has done is, from the plan that you were originally submitted to the plan that's now been proposed, you can see he's pulled the deck back to create some additional landscape area. If you look at the plan, the original plan that was in your package versus what is on this exhibit, he pulled the deck back another 20 plus feet to get the total landscape up to about a little over 26%.
And John,
And-
you made
go
a
ahead.
good point earlier. Who's going to see that additional landscaping?
Well, that's my point. So the discussion, this was done because, frankly, we said, look, we need to make an effort to try to gain a little additional landscaping. But having done that, it really, in my opinion, it doesn't really provide a value to anybody. You don't see it. It becomes, I would say, almost a waste area for
The reason for landscaping is not necessarily for the neighbors to see, it's for green living vegetation.
it's for green living vegetation. What do you mean by that, Rich?
Oxygen.
I mean, we have 91% coverage, impermeable coverage in this town, and that's the reason is so we have less solid ground.
Right, but on this deck surface is what? That's proposed, the material.
It's all gonna be open deck.
Right, so you still have open ground underneath this deck structure. So the vegetation in that area, you still have the pervious area. If it's from a stormwater perspective or runoff perspective, we have the benefit of being on the open bay and can drain this entire property directly into the bay.
But let's not overlook this. This is important. Because the city's ordinance says anything over the dirt, basically, takes away from landscape coverage. Even though the deck's open, there will be vegetation under the deck, correct?
Well, there'll
It
be
just doesn't count.
sand.
Well, there'll be something under there that's not impervious.
Correct.
Producing oxygen. The purpose, look, it really is an environmental issue. I mean, you're saying the purpose is so nobody sees it, so that's not the purpose. The real purpose is to have living, green, growing things on an island that has basically been paved over, more than almost any other town on the coast. So I'm just correcting you when you say that was the intent of the ordinance. The intent of the ordinance is a little more than what the neighbors see. Go ahead.
Okay. With regard to the next variance, that's with regard to building height. As was explained by the architect, there is a height variance necessary here because the condition of the top plate is not being met. I think that the mitigating factor is that they're not asking for a partial third story on the building. That is something that you see on many, many applications, that there is a partial third story, or it becomes a 2.5-story building. You have steep roof pitches. It's an architectural design that the architect has put forward to create an aesthetically pleasing and interesting and unique type of building. So I believe that variance is basically an aesthetic argument and architectural license type of argument, and that because we're meeting the maximum ridge height of 30 feet, the building does meet the intent or purpose of your height requirements. With regard to the rear deck, as I think was already mentioned, the reason for the deck elevation, I've had this discussion with Mr. Fivebush, the reason for the deck elevation is because of the interface with the finished floor. He has a finished floor at 13.75. He was hoping to achieve having that deck be at that same finished floor. We looked at that deck elevation with regard to what are the negative impacts, because there's a lot of discussion in town, obviously, about these deck elevations, blocking the neighbors' views, becoming an issue between property owners and what have you. This is a location that is on the open bay. It is not on a lagoon. These properties fortunately have a little bit more room. The buildings on either side of this lot are all nearly brand new. They both do have relatively high decks, and we believe that that the creation of this deck at the elevation that allows him to interface without any stairs to his finished floor doesn't create a negative impact on either of the adjacent neighbors, given their existing condition. And it is within the confines of the building footprint, so it's not an issue that it is projecting beyond the building footprint and creating a blockage of air, light, and open space from the properties across the street. The fourth variance is related to pool setback. Again, you know, I'm very familiar with how much time this board has put into the pool setback requirements. It's been modified a couple different times because of how concerned you are with that. This is a situation where the architect has essentially designed the building around the pool. It's more than just a pool, it's a water feature. It's one of the main architectural elements of the building based on the way he has laid it out. The structure that crosses across the top of the pool, it's actually a walkway across the top of the pool. Is there, Rich, you pointed out the concern about, it sounded like you were going the direction of, is it a safety issue? You know, if you're on a second floor deck, any second floor deck is a safety issue if you jump off of it.
It is, and we've made everyone remove second floor decks if it's over a pool.
Okay. So, but
I'm
again-
just letting you know that ahead
Yeah,
of time.
that's fine, that's understood. So this whole area is, it's an architectural design to create a unique condition. It's the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Obviously, you have safety concerns with regard to that, which we are hearing.
Can I ask a question? Is it, there's no variance for having a deck over a second floor pool, correct? Is there a variance for that? Is there an
No, I'm
issue?
telling you the history of this board. In every instance, we have made them remove the deck over the pool. I was bringing that to the applicant's attention.
How do
The
we,
intent-
why do we do that if it's not a variance?
It is.
It is a variance?
The intent of that ordinance is 3-foot clearance all the way up.
Parallel.
Okay. So it's not only, you're saying it's not only the absence of the 3-foot walkway around the thing, it's also having to do with the,
If you grant a variance for the one, it applies to everything, because that 3-foot requirement goes away for that section.
okay. Go ahead. So in other words, if they did what I said and made a walkway around that bottom
Jeff.
area, they would still need a variance because of the upper deck, is that what you're saying?
It's not 3-foot clear all the way up.
Okay.
Just for clarity, this is just a question. I mean, does it actually say that?
Yes.
3-foot clear to the sky?
I believe it says 3-foot clearance to any vertical structure.
Vertically, I think is the word.
So there are the four variances that are being requested. Obviously, we've heard a number of concerns from the board already. It looks like there's some neighbors here.
I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Harmon, who is a New Jersey licensed architect, just to kind of finish up what his associate, Mr. Black, had discussed. So the record is complete. If you would please be sworn in.
Sure, Mr. Harmon, you can just state your name and business address for the record as well, and I'll swear you in.
Good evening, Brett Harmon, and it's 1225 North 7th Street, Philadelphia, PA.
And do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Harmon, would you please give your educational experience and your professional licensure, please?
I have a master's degree in architecture from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm practicing since 1998.
And
Licensed in New Jersey?
Yes, sir.
could you please just kind of walk us through and finish up what Mr. Black had discussed regarding the design, how you came up with the design, and ultimately how you feel like the variances would not have an adverse impact on the neighbors or on the municipal land use law of the state of New Jersey or zone code of the city of Maargate. And please take the mic so that the record is clear.
Thank you, sir. Well, we started out, we were very interested in developing a home, a very special home, challenging some architectural principles. Mr. Feibush and his wife were looking for a very modern home, so we spent a lot of time organizing the home around the exterior spaces, which are going to be predominantly where they spend their time in the summer. So that was really the focal point of the design of the home. The Five Bushes enjoy having people over, so they were looking for some sizable deck areas to accommodate his family and friends. So we thought it would be appropriate, as Dan had said, to try to put as much landscaping in the front and to maybe seek a variance for the rear landscaped area. We do understand your green comments, and we did discuss it. Of course, under this entire deck will be pervious material, but we do understand the greenery issue. But our objective here was to really try to design a interesting home around the pool, the hot tub, and the exterior deck.
One of the issues, Mr. Harmon, that was raised by the board referenced the height of the house. Plate height being what it is and the overall height being what it is. We're still, and we've testified to our testimony to this, staying beneath the allowable 30 feet, correct?
30 feet, correct.
And that was something that Ori and his wife took into consideration because obviously they could have gone to 30 feet with 2.5 stories, but the design, in your opinion, in Mr. Black's and Mr. Barnard's opinion, worked out better with 2 stories because you didn't need to make this house a typical 2.5-story house. You want to do something different, but still stay under the total allowable height, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It wasn't even a consideration to exceed your maximum 30-foot height. But we are seeking, for this design, we were seeking 12-foot ceilings in the main living area that is adjacent to the deck in the exterior living area, which does push that second floor plate height. I think it was about 2 feet above the code section. But we did maintain, of course, the 30-foot maximum height. And we were also excited to achieve a steeper roof pitch than the 5 and 12 that is a recommended minimum.
Board has any questions? Mr. Harmon certainly can answer them.
Scale on me, but in order to maybe get a little more landscape coverage, and, you know, I'm just throwing stuff out there. I mean, it is a fairly, it's a giant deck. So, and I know you already took out the part on the left, which is good, but if you, how much more space would you get if, like, you see where right here. Okay, so if you went like that and made that area green space, would that give you your landscape coverage?
Looks to be about 21 by 12. So it would be very close.
Perhaps, Mr. Black's going to testify just for a second here.
I can chime in there. So if you did remove that right side of the deck, you'd gain about a little less than 200 square feet, and we're still under by, if we were to do that, we'd still be under by 400.
Right. But it'd be 400 instead of 600.
That's correct.
All right, okay.
If the board has any further questions, certainly we'll be ready to answer them, but I do see that there are numbers.
What's the total living space in the house, the square footage?
Black.
Just make sure you're speaking to the mic.
Okay, so the first and second floors, the square footage to the exterior face of the exterior wall is about 5,200 square feet.
Total between the two floors?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you. Where are we?
Mr. Feibush is here. He does want to speak, but I think maybe having the public comment now wouldn't be an
That's
awful
fine.
idea, if that's okay with the board.
That's fine.
Sure.
If anyone is here from the public, please come forward, state your name, address, wait to be sworn in, and then say what you have to say.
And as we're doing that, Mr. Chairman, do you accept Mr. Harmon's qualifications?
Yes, I
as an
accept his
architect?
qualifications,
Okay.
yes.
Just wanted to get that on the record. But yeah, anyone from the public, you can come up, state your name and address, and I'll swear you in. Mr. Clerkin, name and address, please.
Joseph Clerkin, 8801 Fulton Avenue.
And you,
I know many on the board know.
You need to be sworn in.
No, I'm sorry.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I know many on the board know me, and my last time here was somewhat heated. Roger and I have had disagreements in the past. Roger shared with me his report, and I think his report was done wonderful. So I just wanted to express that to Roger and the board, that
Thank you.
I agree with Roger's report this time. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Anyone else? Public portion's closed? Oh, I'm sorry. Name and address?
My name is James Robertson. I am at 8805 Fulton. I'm the adjacent property to the applicant.
Okay.
And Mr. Robertson, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I met with the applicant, myself and the other adjacent neighbor at a couple of different meetings. He was, very open to dialogue about his plans, to an exchange of ideas about them. And originally, what he was proposing from where he started to where he is now is a much more acceptable place to me. So I don't have any objection to the plans. I support his plans right now. As you had mentioned, the one variance due to the height, it's not over 30 feet. If he were building a 2.5-story home, he's only building 2 stories, so that's why the need for the variance to the height. There was nothing here that seemed like too big of a reach for me, where I felt like it was a negative impact to my property, and the other adjacent neighbor agreed as well. So I support the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Robertson, just to be clear, your house, and the board's aware of this, is the house that has recently had a large deck constructed, and you have a 2.5 story.
My house is famous, yes.
You have a 2.5-story house that's 30 feet high as well, with the deck over the bay, correct?
Yes.
Is that the one, the deck, we're going to make him take it off?
That's the other neighbor on the other side.
Direct microphone.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Robertson.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Feibush is here. I think it's a good idea to have him sworn in, and he's been working on this project for quite some time. So, Mr. Manos, if you would please.
Sure, Mr. Feibush, just state your name and address for the record.
Sure, Ori Feibush, 8807 Fulton Avenue.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
Thank you.
Ori, I know you've been waiting for this, so.
Sure, no,
Mike
I
is
just,
yours.
thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'll keep my comments brief. My first effort was not to raise the deck height to match the first floor, rather it was to drop the entire home to match the deck height. I wanted a home that was much lower to the ground, much more engaged with the water, and was told that I was not allowed to go 1 inch lower because of the freeboard zone and the inability to have any finished space at that point. So my first suggestion wasn't just lift everything up, but quite the opposite here. I did have 2 members of my family who are fully reliant on wheelchairs. One, my father-in-law unfortunately passed away yesterday morning, so just one now. But it's incredibly important for my wife and I, for our family to be able to enjoy this home. We're tearing down a perfectly good home and building a new one so that we can have our entire family there. And it's very difficult when not everyone can enjoy it because of the steps and the elevation. If you drive by the home today, there's a ridiculous ramp that I built myself off the side of the house to accommodate the deck. It's silly and it's awful, but it's the best we have. And as it relates to landscaping, I'm certainly sensitive to the desires of the community. But that really is the only space that's available for our family to utilize effectively here. So I've reduced some of that deck height. Yes, it was a bit of an arbitrary reduction, and if needed, I'll ultimately do less. But the amount of quality enjoyment my family can have at the same level is important, because we're never going to be able to use the grassy area below it because of the considerations that I mentioned. I'm agnostic to the pool and the 3 feet. I don't fully understand it, but I certainly capitulate to whatever the board wishes here. And I think if nothing else, the neighbors here, whether they support or oppose the project, they can certainly speak to we are the quietest people on the block. You don't have to worry about anyone jumping off the second floor here onto the first. That was never a consideration, and even though you've now put the idea in my head, I'm not brave enough to try it. I do just want to also submit, they weren't able to be here, but Nicole Stamp, who's my neighbor on the other side, the opposite neighbor of Jim, did write a letter of support as well. So the 2 immediate neighbors, and I know that there's more involved than just the height and the aesthetic, but at least as it relates to the height and any possible adverse reaction that those neighbors could have, both are in support of the project, one here in person and one, I don't know the proper form, but if I could pass up a letter, I'd appreciate it. But certainly
Leo,
happy
am I
to.
allowed to accept it since we can't cross-examine?
It's not evidence. If they're going to hand it in, it'll go in the file. The board can draw any inference it wants from the fact that the other neighbor is not here objecting. But
you.
it's technically hearsay. So if you really want to submit it, we can put it in the file, but
I
the
think
board's
it's
not to consider it as evidence.
At a minimum, I think it shows that Mr. and Mrs. Fivebush were cognizant enough of their neighbor's house next door, which is recently built, along with Mr. Robertson's house, to reach out and try to discuss with them as much as they could. And, I had to also acknowledge Mr. Clearkin, because we also had a discussion at the meeting a few months ago, and, his acknowledgement that Roger's report was correct, which I also believe is correct, but also, the importance of good neighborly relationships along this area seemed like, with when Mr. Fivebush reached out and the neighbors coming tonight, hopefully listening and understanding a little more about the house, seems like it's a good project for Maargate, because you've got more than just a spec builder coming in to try to build something and make more money. You've got a family who does the right thing by reaching out, modifying the plan, working with the city, Mr. McLarnon, on a fairly regular basis to try to get as few variances as necessary, but obviously we're left with a few. Be that what is, what Ori did is what people generally don't do, and I think that shows that, by working with his neighbors and working with his architect, this plan is about the best possible plan we can put together. Obviously, there are variances that are left, but the neighbors don't dictate whether the board votes yes or no. The board has to consider the aspects it finds important under Maargate's land use code, but I do think now that the case is in, and you've had testimony from the experts here, the benefits certainly clearly outweigh the detriments, to the extent there could be any detriments, and the view from the front of this house will have such a greatly increased amount of landscaping that from anyone driving down Fulton now, you've got 3 new homes, all of which are very beautiful, and you've got more homes down the street and across the street, all of which will, I think, with Ori's potential new construction here, be a real great benefit to the city of Maargate, and hopefully what ultimately gets built here will not upset any of the neighbors or anybody else in town. I think that based on the location between 2 newly constructed homes that both have big decks, this probably won't get noticed too much unless you're in a boat along the water. And that's pretty much it, unless the board has any further questions.
Yeah, how far the side that can be 20 feet, what's the actual measurement?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't understand.
The 20-foot,
Oh, the plate height?
the plate height, I'm
Oh,
sorry, the plate
20
height.
22 feet.
22?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mr. Manis, may I give this to the board secretary just after your file?
Sure.
If I can correct.
No,
Mr.
go right
Gold-
ahead.
Mr. Goldstein, he sort of implied I am here supporting it. I'm here supporting Roger's report.
I
and-
got that.
And for the
Yeah.
board to,
Listen
do
to
the
Roger's
ordinance
point.
per code, but I'm not supporting it as Mr. Goldstein.
I think you made yourself clear, I got that point.
I just meant that we're having a good rapport back and forth, which is good. Yeah.
Mr.
Okay,
Feibush,
where are we?
I did hear him say, and to me, I actually think that it's pretty cool, like the way that you look down from the second floor and the pool's there. I like that concept. But, you know, to me, the intent of the 3-foot walk around for the safety is really pertains to right around the pool area.
Would you?
So, you follow me? So so from what I understood, if you were, you would be okay with doing what I talked about,
So I'd
creating?
like to propose a compromise, but
Go
I'll
ahead.
show all my cards, I'll capitulate to what you're asking. If not, would you support a ledge that's just a few inches below the surface? It accomplishes the aesthetic effect that our architect was looking for, but eliminates the safety concern because it's just a few inches of
Mhm.
water there. If that's something you'd be willing to accommodate, alternatively, yes, we would support the reduction of the,
Right.
I'd call that dangerous.
All the way up.
What do you mean all the way up?
The deck would be 3 feet back too.
No, he didn't say that.
But he needs a variance for that.
Right, I know, but I was saying as a compromise, because to me, the real safety issue is not having, in that corner there, not having any type of walkway.
so then
along
I would,
that.
yes, support the 3-foot walkway along that, that
Right.
corner there. So yes.
It's still not gonna eliminate the variance, but
Understood.
in my mind anyway, it accomplishes what I always thought was, you know, our objective was to have a 3-foot clear walkway around the pool.
So
So
I'm
would it be fair
agreeable
s-
to.
Would it be fair to say, Mr. Richmond, it's your understanding that the intent of the ordinance was so that someone would have a 3-foot walkway, not so that if there was a structure 20 feet in the air sticking out, they would have the ability to
Yeah,
jump
but I
over
was
the pool?
wrong.
I understand.
No, that's not the intent of the
No, no,
ordinance.
But I said that Mr. Richmond was basing his comment on
Right.
his interpretation of the ordinance, that if you have a 3-foot walkway, that's ground level. If something's above and goes over the pool, potentially that wouldn't be as big of a deal. But obviously, the way the ordinance is written, and Mr. McLaurin and I have discussed this, it's vertical structure. So
Right.
if you draw the
But,
plane up
yeah,
in the air-
right, but well, I just said it, you know, if you have a 3-foot walkway all around the pool, if anything ever happens, at least there's, you know,
He would,
it's better access.
he said capitulate, I would say.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
I'm agreeable.
Good. Okay, great.
What does that do with the deck?
So then just, well, whatever, you guys.
Yes.
Would Mr. Feibush be agreeable to giving up that 200 square feet for landscaping? Gets us closer to where we need to be.
Sorry.
No, listen, this is why we're here.
I'd rather not, but ultimately, if that is the difference between building a home for my family and not, I would be amenable to eliminating, I don't have the dimension, but from the bottom of the divot here, so basically this square here, I believe that's the dimension you had, but I won't swear to it. It's 13 feet by, it looks like about 15 feet eyeballing it, but I'm not entirely sure on the dimension there. Maybe 180 square feet, not a full 200. But it's,
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fibish?
Yes.
I have one question. You were concerned about how many steps you had to go to get into the house. You'd rather have a lower house?
yes, sir.
On the first floor, you're at 13 feet of rise.
Yes, sir.
That would be 20 treads.
Yes, sir.
If you went to 10 feet, which would be 11 feet on rise, you'd have 16. That's 4 less.
Correct.
That gets you a lot closer on your variance.
I'm not allowed. I don't remember the reason, but this is the bare minimum height.
That's what Roger told him it had to be at.
I tried.
What's that?
I even offered to use pressure-treated lumber to get it lower. They
No, not that, not at all. This has nothing to do with, this has to do with the 12-foot ceiling inside for your height variance.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, the height of the first floor matters a lot. I misunderstood. I thought you were saying bringing the home down.
Well, you were mentioning, you know, about the amount of stairs. And with the 12-foot ceiling, that's actually a 13-foot rise.
No, sir, I was referring to the stairs from the first, so basically, if there's somebody in the home, they
Second
can.
floor would be a 13-foot rise.
But the individuals in my family are using an elevator, whether it's 1 step or 5 steps, so the ceiling height is important there. I was referring to
You're not
the.
getting what I'm saying.
No, sir, I'm sorry.
You have a height variance.
Yes, sir.
From 12 feet to 10 feet is 2 feet off, and it's 4 less rises.
Yes, sir, but
I'm done.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, where are we? We're still in public comment, so are we done with public comment? Public portion is closed. Anything else, Eric? Any other, before I ask if there's any questions from the board? Any other comments from the board? Could you,
How deep is that pool, Mr. Feinbush?
It's really as deep as he wants it to be. The deepest it could be would be probably about 8 feet, the deepest. But that'll be up to Ori when he actually goes to build it.
the pool's level with the deck, correct?
The top of it, yeah, the coping is.
Right.
Sure.
Patterson, would the board give us just a couple minutes before you vote, please?
Yeah, we'll take a couple-minute recess.
Chairman.
You ready? All right, we're back in session.
The applicant, having discussed with the architects and Mr. Barnhart, would respectfully make the following changes to the proposal. The entire first floor would be cut out 1 foot so that the entire house would come down a foot, 29 where 30 would be allowed. But on the plate height issue, we're still off by a foot, but we would lower everything from the first floor down. Instead of 12-foot ceilings, it would be 11-foot ceilings. Everything would be lowered accordingly. So you're gaining 1 foot of basically a smaller house by a foot in height, and that's coming out of the first floor. We would still need a plate height variance, but it would be for less, and
It's a height variance.
that would be the proposal. Oh, and I'm sorry, they would be cutting out, say, 220? 200 square feet, with what Mr. Richmond pointed out earlier, on the right side of the deck. That little divot area would come out completely, so that would increase the landscape coverage accordingly as well.
How much shy would you still be?
I think you're down around 200 to 300 shy?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
About 400?
200 to 300?
I think it'd be about 400.
400.
400 square feet of coverage would be shy, Mr. Wozleski.
Did we do anything with the deck height?
Deck height would remain where it is. The house comes down. Ideally, what we would like to do is to make the whole first floor lower. I don't know if the board would be willing to grant a BFE variance.
can't do that.
I know. I'm saying that in jest partially, but that would be ideal. He doesn't want it to be up that high, so rather than have house up higher, deck lower, he'd want everything to still be on one level. So that would be the revised proposal.
So you're gonna take 200 more square feet out of the impervious coverage, and you're gonna lower the house by a foot.
That's correct.
I'd like to clarify
Oh,
that.
I'm
height
sorry.
issue. What we're talking, we are seeking a variance for the plate height. So we're taking a foot out of the total height. We're going to remain with the ridge at 30 feet and reduce our plate height variance by a foot.
It's still a height variance either way.
Right.
Plate height variance, correct.
No, it's
Just
height
so
variance,
it's-
roof height variance. The plate height is a condition. You're not meeting the condition, so it's still a height variance.
Correct.
In other words, all you're doing is increasing the pitch on the roof.
scratch that. Earlier, that's the
You're
proposal.
increasing the pitch on the roof.
No, no, Mr. Cristaldi,
If we're staying at 30.
we're not. That, it's
It's under
29.
29.
It's go- Okay.
Yeah. So I think Mr. Richmond said it correctly. Everything comes down a foot, 11-foot ceiling on the first floor, 29 over the finished first floor to the roof, peak of the roof. So the pitch doesn't change. It's still going to be 512. It's all coming down. We're not trying to squeeze in. I know what you're saying, that you would make the plate, the pitch greater and the height stay the same.
They get rid of that very easily.
How's that?
Drop the plate height, increase the pitch, put the collar beams back up where you want them.
We're dropping the whole thing to 29.
You never notice it. You got two architects sitting next to you.
Mike, can you pull your microphone down?
You just
Thank
don't
you.
change
Making
no matter
noise
where
with
you
the
sit.
paper.
I said, you don't change no matter where you sit.
Okay. All right, fine. So, the architect said, which Mr. Feibush agrees with, just, it's Mr. Richmond's statement, just taking everything down a foot, so the height variance would still be a variance, because it would be the plate higher than 20 feet. But the roof peak would be 29 and not 30. The first floor would have an 11-foot ceiling, that's where the height's coming out of. Everything else stays the same, but they pick up roughly 200 square feet of added landscape coverage by taking out that side of the deck.
Okay,
Good?
are we settled?
We are for now, thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the board before Leo reads a
And
motion?
you're going to provide the 3 feet around the pool, but
Correct.
but it's still a variance because of the decks.
3-foot walkway, but on the way up, the decks will still be out over the pool area.
I do want to point out that the variance, the ordinance does give an allowance for landscape coverage if there's exterior steps leading up to the first floor due to BFE. I'm not saying they get the full use at 30%, but those front steps do occupy some area that could be landscaped. They're still not going to meet the 30%, but I think the board ought to consider that they are a little bit closer to that 30, between 30 and 35% than they once were by quite a bit.
Leo?
We ready?
Yeah.
Okay. No further, if there's no further discussion, someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following variances. For total landscaping area, 35% is required. The revised plans show approximately 26%, which they, based on the latest discussions, are gonna increase by about 200 square feet. Which will be a condition, and they'll provide an exact calculation to us. Building height variance, whereas the maximum permitted is 30 feet with conditions. They're not meeting those conditions, but they did make the representation that they're gonna lower overall height to 29 feet. But since the plate height is still approximately a foot too high, they require a height variance. A rear yard deck height variance of, where they're proposing an elevation at an elevation of 13.75 feet, where a 10.67 feet is the permitted maximum. And the swimming pool clearance variance, while they're gonna maintain the 3-foot clearance around the pool, a variance is still required because if you extend that upwards to the deck, there's not 3 feet from the edge of the deck. The conditions would be the applicant will provide a non-conversion agreement for all space below BFE. As represented, they're going to reduce the overall height to 29 feet above finished floor. They're going to eliminate about 200 square feet on the right side, that right area of decking, which will increase the landscaping area. Again, they'll make the pool clearance around the pool itself 3 feet, and any other conditions set forth in Mr. McLaren's report, with the understanding that his report was based on initially 10 variances, so any other conditions that still remain, and that's it. That's the motion someone needs to make.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Clem Wasleski,
Well, it hasn't been mentioned before, but I certainly can see at some point that space that's called a gym is going to become a bedroom. We've seen gyms on houses before, but not with a full bath and closets. But if that's what they claim it's going to be, we suppose can't dispute that. As far as the pool's concerned, we are apparently going to get 3 foot around it on the ground level. But the deck's overlooking it from the second floor. Sooner or later, some young person or some inebriated person is going to give it a try and go off over the railings, and hopefully he lands in the deep end. As far as the height variance is concerned, they came down 1 foot, but they certainly could come down 2 foot. They don't need the excessive ceiling heights that are being proposed. And the landscaping, when you have a lot over 7,000 square feet, there's no reason that you couldn't design to the requirements of the landscaping we have in the ordinance. So I have to vote no on the application.
Rich Patterson,
I'd like to go over these one at a time, too. On the landscape area total, I commend you bringing it down from 160 or whatever to 400. But as Clem said, you've got 7,500 feet of land available. You have a 5,200 square foot house. It seems like a great house. But you designed a house that doesn't fit on what you're allowed to do. I don't see with every one of these variances, you could build the same beautiful big house without any variances. The building height, 11-foot ceilings, that's what you want, but that's not what you get. I mean, I would vote no on that alone. The rear yard deck height, the board's proposal is to drop them down. The master plan that we just put in 3-4 years ago as it regard to deck heights has created many unanticipated problems, and we're proposing that the decks be down to bulkhead height. So to grant a variance for a rear deck height at this point, I don't see. The pool, I think that whole pool variance should have been eliminated. To have the deck overhanging the pool, as I said before, it's not precedent, but I can tell you we've never voted for it. I never would vote for it. So on every item, I have to vote no.
Mike Cristaldi,
In agreement with the other members, the landscape is very easily to meet. The height is extremely easy to meet. The rear deck is a problem to try to meet, but we're setting that in stone soon, so my vote is no for the project.
Joe DiGirolamo,
I agree with the other members of the board. I think there's just too many issues here with regard to variances that are too steep for me to be able to vote in favor of. So I vote no.
Ron Grupo,
I think you designed a really cool house here, and I think that you've made some concessions to us. I know when you're on the bay, you want to build special home. I don't have the same problems that the other board members have, so I vote in favor of the project.
Stephen Giuseppe?
Yeah, I'm going to have to vote no on this because it is, well, we're trying to reduce this, well, it's oversized house, and I think it could have been designed to fit on the piece of property. I vote no.
Mike Richmond?
I appreciate, the concessions you made. I don't really have any problem with the height, and I think the landscaping, I kind of agree with the large amount of landscaping in the front is, kind of offsets the total lack of landscaping. I guess the main thing is the deck height, and I get it with but, I just built a house on the bay, and, we had to make it a 10-8, and they have older mothers and fathers, and, but you gotta deal with it, so I'm gonna have to vote no.
Application fails 1-6.
Thank you.
This goes to them.
Do I need to ask for public participation, or can we go to other business?
Ask if you need to.
Is there anyone here from the public that wants to speak? Public portion's closed. Other business?
Can I ask that we take this conversation outside, please?
Nice house, but poor design for it's really poor design. What square footage is that?
Eric,
Eric.
can we have conversation outside, please?
It doesn't fit on.
Thank you.
All the things they asked for were, I want.
Yeah.
Exactly, Clem. Clem, exactly. Exactly.
These would trade.
We have business, so as soon as that guy in the back gets out of here.
Well, no, it can be, it's.
Yes, it
It's a
is.
closed session, so he can stand there as long as he doesn't talk.
I want him out of here. This is, nice seeing you, John. As you all know or don't know, this is Johanna's last meeting. I want to read her resignation for the record. It's dated September 26th to the Maargate Planning Board. Dear Planning Board members, it has been an honor and a pleasure to serve you for the past 7 years. There have been many changes and memorable experiences in the past 7 years. We have lost members and gained members. We have changed location and start time of meetings. We have had short meetings and long meetings. We have had happy applicants and unhappy applicants, and some at the same meeting. I have enjoyed all of it and will remember it with fond memories. At this time, I must submit my resignation as of September 30th. Thank you for many laughs, your support, professionalism, and friendship. Good luck with whoever takes my place. Sincerely. Oh, wait a minute, that wasn't there. Sincerely, Johanna. Johanna, thank you, and I want you to know that we have not only enjoyed but appreciated your professionalism and keeping me straight and remembering to bring my things, what we didn't like was when you tried to put the responsibility on me to make people talk into the mic when that was your responsibility. And you did accept it, you did take it back, and you've done a very good job at that. So,
I'll help with that going forward.
you will.
Yes, yes.
All right,
Talk to
but
Mike.
I really think, I mean, I too have enjoyed the board. I think we have one of the greatest boards. I think we're professional. I think we talk too much, but hopefully that'll change. But it has been nothing but proud to serve with you, so thank you very much. And on behalf of all of us, knowing that you're going on vacation, we would like to give you this as a little gift. Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you. Thank you. I really do love you all.
We're gonna miss you.
It's,
very
yeah, it
sad
has
that-
been. You-
Because to me, this is as much fun as any job can be. So, thank you all.
All right.
And I appreciate all the help that you've all given me throughout the years.
Speaking of Mike.
We hope to
Yes,
take care of
please
that.
speak into the
We
microphone.
moved Clem down there. He doesn't have to turn so much. The mic is closer. I used to have a button where I could cut anybody off, but they changed it.
Yeah, we gotta do something about these things.
So we are, in honor of Johanna, where are we going? What time is it? Do you want to go to the cabin, or we want to take you out and have you buy us drinks? Is the cabin okay?
Cabin's good with me.
Cabins?
Okay. He usually saves it for us. Do you want to go to the greenhouse? Oh, is it that?
He'll still have it.
He's never failed us yet. So, all right, so do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting? We have no other business, do we? Yeah, Jimmy's not here to run us out of here. Meeting is adjourned.
Who seconded that?
That guy.
Okay. Thank you.
Paper crumbler.